Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 1706.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today I'm in Quebec, Canada, Greenfield Park to be exact, with a very special guest by the name of Mark Boudreau. Mark, welcome to Cars Yeah. Are you buckled up and ready for a fun ride?
I'm ready to go at kilometers an hour, though.
Yeah, you guys do that thing up there, aren't you? Yeah,
We do.
Someday here in the U.S. we'll catch up with the metric system and all that. We tried it years back, but it was too hard. We couldn't figure it out, so sorry about that. Hey, before I give you a proper introduction, would you tell our listeners one little thing that most people don't know about you?
Well, ironically enough, I actually host a radio show.
Well, hey, I'm talking to a pro, so I'm going to learn something from you today.
It's a monthly radio show, and it's music. It has nothing to do with motorsport.
Okay.
But it's something I've been doing for quite a few years.
Well, very cool. Well, we'll have a little bit of fun today. I do them a little more often than once a month, as my listeners know. So we'll have some fun. Let me give you a proper introduction, and we're going to dive into why it's important to wear a seatbelt, because today we're going racing. Mark Boudreau is the CEO and publisher of Motorsports Prospects, where he uses his background in the legal field to research for the Motorsport Prospect Directory and for his clients. His goal is to ensure that all drivers, their family, and advisors have the information they need to make an informed motorsport-related decision. He works with racers at the beginning of their motorsports career and helps them navigate the expensive and complex business side of racing, making sure they have enough information to make intelligent decisions with their capital. Motorsports is not easy, but it's possible to achieve your goals as a driver with Mark and Motorsports Prospect. We'll be back in just a minute to talk more about this very unique niche business. But first, a word from our valued sponsors, because like in motorsports, you can't survive if you don't have some support. So sit tight, give them a listen. We'll be right back. Did you know Covercraft offers you much more than just car covers? They have quality protection for the inside of your vehicle as well. Their plush, custom-fit floor mats turn any ride into something special. Or choose Premier Berber custom floor mats, a favorite of mine, if you want something very stylish and pretty unique. Covercraft floor mats are quality made and provide your ride with the ultimate protection from moisture, dirt, mud, snow, and slush, and those occasional spills. Don't forget your vehicle's trunk area. Their Carhartt custom cargo liners not only look great, but keep your rear cargo area and seats protected. Custom fit truck liners for sedans, coupes, and SUVs are perfect to protect the factory carpet from all those things that can stain and damage your vehicle. All your options are quality made, easy to use, secure to the floor, and look oh so good. Check out covercraft.com for a wide variety of styles, colors, and options for a custom fit today. And have I got a deal for you? If you use the code YEAH120 at covercraft.com, you'll get 10% off your Covercraft order. That's right, 10% off. Simply use the code YEAH120, YEAH120 at checkout. Covercraft, protecting the things that move you. American Collectors Insurance. That's who now protects my Porsche Turbo, the one I call my Orange Crush. They've been protecting vehicles since 1976. With all the time, effort, and money you've put into your classic vehicles, do you know how much you would receive if yours was stolen, damaged, or totaled in an accident or a fire? Your regular auto insurance carriers won't tell you until after the claim, and more than likely, you'll be in for a rude awakening. With an agreed value policy from American Collectors Insurance, you'll be paid your vehicle's full agreed value. No surprises. So don't just hope for a fair claim settlement. Be certain and know exactly what you'll get with an agreed value policy. I shopped around and decided to protect my car with American Collectors Insurance. Give them a call today for a quote at 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324 and protect the ones you love. Tell them Mark Green at Cars Yeah sent you. That's American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors, folks just like you and me. All right, Mark, we are back. And as we continue on this journey, I'm going to call your life. I would love for you to share a success quote or a mantra. It's a nice way to get the racing tires spinning here on Cars Yeah. Mark, grab the wheel.
Well, interestingly enough, without even realizing what 2020 was going to have in store for us, New Year's Eve, I actually latched onto a quote by Winston Churchill, which is one that I tend to adhere to now pretty much regularly. And that's: a pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. Little did I know that would be essential for survival in 2020, but it's a good one.
Yeah, how come you didn't let us all know what was coming, dude? Holy cow. Well, I love this quote. It's so important, and it's really what this whole year has been about. And so many of my inspiring automotive enthusiasts have seized the opportunities that have come up when they realized, you know what, we've got to change course. We've got to do something different on this racetrack, in your case, because things aren't as we planned. And in racing, you always make a plan and then you're ready to change it. So let's dive into what that quote means for you for this year. And I'd love for you to tell our listeners more about this very niche focused business that you've created, Motorsports Prospects, and what it means, how you help people, and how you've modified things as this crazy year has progressed.
Well, thanks, Mark. Motorsport Prospects, the idea behind that, now I've always been a fan of racing. Like a lot of Canadians, when Gilles Villeneuve started racing in Formula One, it caught my attention. I never really was aware of the sport before that. Of course, I am dating myself because I was in high school.
Yeah.
So as I saw Gilles Villeneuve race, I got interested in Formula One. As things progressed, I was very interested in tracking North American drivers that were trying to make their way in Europe, and especially Canadians. Now, of course, that was before the internet. Trying to track guys like Stéphane Proulx and Alan Berg was quite the challenge, but I was curious as to how they progressed, would they make it to Formula One? And then, of course, the next question was, well, how do you get to Formula One? How do you become a professional race car driver? So I was always fascinated with the actual business of motorsport. As I engaged my career in the law, I tended to pull away from that a little bit. Always a fan, not overly involved in the kind of the intricacies, the day-to-day stuff. But I did go to a lot of races. I go to a fair amount of races, from everywhere from Formula One to IndyCar to IMSA races, right down to Formula Fords, and even some karting. Mm-hmm. And as I'd go to these races, I would naturally tend to talk to parents. I've coached hockey for years. I'm very familiar with, the hockey parent, and in this case, the racing parent. And as I talked to them, I was always curious as to how, in fact, they made the decision to, for example, pick a team or pick a series for their kids to compete in. And then the obvious question was, how do they afford it?
Right.
So as I was talking to them, I realized that there was no real directory, no real resource that they could go to that allows them to at least make some kind of decisions, informed decisions that are independent, neutral, because the money involved it's very much like sending your kids to college.
Right.
It's a lot of money. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of sometimes misinformation. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna put something together that allows them to, research things like, the different series, the different teams that are competing, rough ideas of budgets, things of that nature. And then it just kind of expanded from that. I kept a list just for my own personal information. And then finally, I decided to stick it on the web. I've been having a lot of people that access it. So we cover series, teams, and then services. So everything from driver coaches to trainers to mental conditioning and physical conditioning, simulator coaches, simulator suppliers, courses on obtaining sponsorship, all this kind of stuff, young scholarship programs. There's just a ton of information out there, but it was never centralized. You have to kind of really shop around for it. So I figured I'd centralize it. As I did that, I'd mention it to parents. And then I actually had a parent who asked me, well, how do you plan to make money with this? And I said, to be honest with you, I love motorsport. I like to help. I wasn't really thinking along that lines. And they basically said, look, we love the idea. but I don't necessarily have the time to go through all of this.
Mm-hmm.
What if I paid you to basically do the research, to essentially do what I would do in a law firm where they want to know what are their best options.
Right.
And that's essentially how that took off.
This is a really cool story because Mark has what we call a day job, I guess. He's a bit of a sidepreneur is what I like to call him. He's found his passion. He figured out a way to create a niche market for it. And lo and behold, there was an opening there, just like on a racetrack. He dove in, he took that corner, and now he's heading down the track to success, which I think is great. Let's stick to motorsports in this case, since we are on cars. Yeah. What are some of the key factors when somebody's thinking of going into motorsports that they really have to focus on? And then areas that then you dive a little deeper and you become in essence a consultant for them, right?
Yeah, I kind of look at it as a high school guidance counselor. Mm-hmm. Same kind of idea. I'm not there to coach them on how to drive a car or how to raise sponsorship. I'm there to give them an idea of where that information is and also to structure their search. So if their daughter is in karting and is looking to race in cars, well, here are the options that you have. You're based in the United States, so you have sports cars, for example, or single seaters. And then these are the different levels. These are the different budgets. And these are some teams that I would recommend that you contact. Here are the contact people. But the key thing to keep in mind is you have to be both realist, but you can't give up on your dream.
Right.
It is expensive and it can get very, very frustrating and very disheartening. You know, if you follow racing, you know the stories of the people that essentially run out of budget and can't continue for a number of reasons. So it's important to understand that. But it's also important to understand that there are always options there if you are determined enough and if you want to put in the work. Right. Because ultimately, it is a lot of work.
Yes.
So that is the key thing to keep in mind. If you are just expecting to show up, hop in a car, and finish on the podium, it doesn't really work that way. As a matter of fact, most people will argue quite rightly that the actual racing of the car is probably the smallest part of the whole equation. It's raising the money, it's making the contacts, all that kind of stuff, the networking involved. That is the key part of it. So, for example, you might not have the money to race, but it doesn't stop you from it, for example, for getting involved in sim racing. That's a great way to kind of get your feel. It doesn't stop you from going to races, introducing yourself to people, making contacts. You never know where these things might lead. I mean, there's a driver, great Canadian driver, who essentially ended up racing in 4 different series. And the only reason he got those opportunities is because he was at the racetrack. He had introduced them to different teams. They knew he was a driver. And sure enough, the next year when an opportunity, which was a one-time opportunity, came up, they thought of him. They called him. He hopped in the car. He did quite well. Then another opportunity came up, then another one, and that's how it kind of all evolved.
Right.
So you have to be determined. You really, really you have to want it, just like anything in life.
Yeah.
And once you do, you need to do things to make things happen. And part of the problem is that sometimes parents certainly are not quite sure of what it is that they should do. What I'm trying to help them do is point them in the direction of where they can get that information in order to help them structure either their dreams or their children's dreams and give them the opportunity to basically pursue them.
Yeah, it's tremendous. I've interviewed hundreds of race car drivers, and everything you just mentioned, I've heard this story over and over from all of them in a variety of ways. One of the biggest ones is just you've got to be around this. You've got to work hard. You've got to be there. You got to go to tracks and talk to people and carry your helmet and keep your driver's suit handy. And you just never know. I've had guests that have done that. They've been to many, many races, and then one time, okay, hop in the car. Let's see what you do in a couple laps. And that led to a career or a job. But the fact that you're combining all these pieces of this very intricate puzzle, it's not the old days of James Hunt partying all night and then jumping into a car and going for a drive. It's a whole other world now. And when you think of somebody, you quoted Gilles, of course, an incredibly driven driver, kind of reminds me of a Senna type guy that is just so dedicated, so focused. But even then, in those days, it was just so different. So you're a consolidator of all these pieces of the puzzle and putting it together in front of people and allowing them the opportunity to be able to see it. So I think this is really cool. Now, let me ask you about a challenge, because I always ask my guests that, a big challenge that you faced, maybe in putting this together. Maybe you're in the midst of it now, COVID aside, and talk about a big challenge you faced. But more importantly, what was the lesson learned and how are you overcoming that?
Well, interestingly enough, probably the biggest challenge I faced actually had nothing to do with what I'm doing now. It was that I was practicing law, and that was something that's extremely intensive. Talk about intensive and a lot of work. That is very much so. A lot of time, a lot of effort. But I came to the conclusion that law, as I was practicing it at the time, was not necessarily what I wanted to do. And that was a bit of a gut check. And so I had to pivot. I had to pivot away from what I thought I wanted to do, and I needed to look at the opportunities and pursue something differently. Right. And, that ties in, very much it ties into racing, and it ties into anything in life. You have to be ready and willing to seize whatever opportunity that comes up, and you have to actually take advantage of it. So for me, there was an opportunity that came up that was not related to law, that I basically jumped in and took advantage of it and ran with that. So the thing I learned, and what I would always tell certainly any driver, is be open to every and any opportunity. Don't discount anything. You might want to be Formula One world champion. Don't discount the fact that of sports cars, for example. Don't discount the fact that stock cars might be something that there might be an opportunity there. Always be open to every opportunity and be ready and willing to take them, because if you don't, you never know that might be the one opportunity you had that will, as we were saying, things will build on top of that. You have to just go for it, essentially. Sure. And that's really what I learned. You not everything goes the way you want it to go, as we have all learned quite dramatically in 2020. No kidding. Yeah. So, but you got to be willing to just go for it and take advantage of whatever opportunity that you can, because if you don't, somebody will.
Right. Yeah. Again, it's that opening in the track somebody will take.
Exactly.
I want to go back to this. When you study law, it's a huge amount of work, and you get into it, you become a lawyer, and then you realize maybe this isn't what I want to do. It's almost like a physician. And I've talked to people and they go, I just realized this isn't what I want to do. Why do I want to keep doing this? Is it really a gut check when you've dedicated so much and you realize you've got to make that major move to go down another road? I would assume for you, it was a really difficult decision, but looking back, it was important that you did it, because if you didn't, you kind of will go, well, look, where would I be now? Would I still be a lawyer? Would I still be miserable and unhappy and going, well, I guess I'll just live for retirement or the weekends, which is no way to go through life, because especially this year, there's no guarantee you're going to get to that point.
Exactly. And often I have people asking me that, do you regret leaving the practice? I don't regret it, only because, quite honestly, what I'm doing now with Motorsport Prospects and what I do in my day job to some extent, what I learned in law school as far as how to present myself, how to look at all sides of a situation, how to research, that is the key to what I do in Motorsport Prospects.
Yeah, it was training.
Yeah. So, when people are asking me, what teams do you recommend that I should look into to have my daughter race in, Formula 4, I'm looking at this as a legal problem. I'm looking at the pros and the cons, and I'm giving them essentially the tools that they can use to make their decision. As a lawyer, you're not necessarily telling a client to do one thing or the other. You're saying, this is the opportunity, this is the pros and the cons. You ultimately have to make your decision, and hopefully it's an informed decision.
Awesome story. Well, let's take a break and thank our sponsors. We come back, I want to dive into this passion you have for cars, so keep the seatbelts on. We'll be right back. Let's step away from the conversation and talk about our charity of choice here at Cars Yeah, America's Automotive Trust. America's Automotive Trust is a group of like-minded nonprofits that are working together to preserve and promote car culture across the country. Together, they provide scholarships and grants to aspiring technicians and restoration artists. They provide youth education programs and bring communities together through auto-related events, car shows, and drives. Among these nonprofits is TechForce Foundation, a great organization dedicated to solving the technician shortage that threatens the transportation industry today. By providing career development resources and increasing awareness and enthusiasm for the tech profession, TechForce is bringing bright young students into the auto, diesel, aviation, marine, motorcycle, motorsports, and restoration worlds. To date, they've awarded more than $10 million in scholarships and grants to tech students. And in times like these, I don't have to tell you how essential those techs are, keeping our delivery and emergency vehicles running and keeping America rolling. To learn more about TechForce or to make a donation to this cause, visit www.techforce.org. You'll be glad you did. What do you do after running a race team for 27 years with over 100 professional wins, multiple wins at the 24-Hour of Daytona, and a win at Le Mans? Well, if you're Kevin Buckler, a racer and the racing group's team owner, you create Adobe Road Winery. Located in Petaluma, California, he and his team have created a winning combination with the Racing Series, 4 ultra-premium red wine blends that are in a class of their own. Like racing, these wines comprise of art, precision, engineering, science, and a whole lot of fun. You can choose from 4 blends titled Redline, Apex, Shift, and the 24. Today I'm going to tell you about Redline. It's a rich and complex blend delivering a taste of ripe blackberries, black cherry licorice, and a hint of toasty oak. An added very cool option is that this features the world's first interactive wine label. That's right. When you pour the wine, the 3-dimensional tachometer actually hits the red line. It's incredible. The Racing Series is a killer gift for the automotive enthusiast in your life, and I've got a deal for you. If you use the code CARSYEAH, all one word in all caps, when you go to checkout, you'll get $10 off any purchase of wines from the Racing Series. The wine ships promptly and arrives quickly right at your door. Use the code CARSYEAH at checkout for $10 off of your purchase today. There's always a seat at the table for excellence with the Racing Series. Go to adoberoadwines.com and use the code CARSYEAH to save $10 today. Cheers! All right, Mark, we're back. I would love for you to share a story with me that kind of was a pivotal moment in your life when you knew that you were going to be a car guy.
Well, again, it goes back to Gilles Villeneuve.
He did it to you.
Yeah. He was somebody that just, again, this was pre-internet. So, you'd get your information from the newspaper, from the radio. You might get to see a race that was pre-recorded on TV. But there was something about the raw passion of the guy that just gripped, not just me, obviously, but, it gripped people worldwide. Mm-hmm. And here's a guy that made no excuses. When you talk about 110%, well, Gilles Villeneuve gave, 110% every waking hour of the day. I just saw it and I thought, this is incredible. Like, to me, this was like a fighter pilot. A Formula One car is, we talk about cars. In some ways, it's so different from a regular car. Mm-hmm. It's almost like a fighter jet on wheels.
Right.
And watching this guy whip it around the track, sometimes on 3 wheels. I mean, it was just
sometimes with tires gone.
Oh yeah, it was just astonishing. And yet you don't ever really know these people, but he seemed to be just a nice guy, just a nice, quiet Canadian guy. And here he is mixing it up in Monaco, in Monza, in Silver. It just really caught my imagination. Obviously, when he was killed, that knocked things down a notch, but only temporarily. Once you're into cars, once you're into racing, we all know it's an addiction.
Hard to step out. Yes.
It's very hard to shake. You either get it or you don't get it. Yep. And I got it.
Most definitely. Well, a good guy to bring you into the fold, a great racer, great person. Was there a special vehicle in your life that you've owned that brings back special memories?
Well, ironically enough, it's probably a car that not many people even are aware of, but it was a Chevy Z24 or Z24, I suppose, as it would be said in the States.
Yes.
And it was a hatchback, 5-speed manual. I remember it had a digital dashboard. And this was the late 80s. So it looked kind of like Knight Rider, but the thing performed. It was such a fun car to drive. And it was theoretically practical because it was a hatch, 2 doors, red, and you just got in that thing and it was just fun to bomb around with it. I mean, doing donuts. It was just a fun car.
That was the car they called the Cavalier?
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
That was the mid-'80s, 85, 86. Yeah, right after I got married. And the Cavalier. I think they're only 4-cylinder motors, like maybe, 150 horsepower or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But they were fun. It was fun. It was such a fun car. And the irony now is, of course, I got married, raised a family, kind of did the minivan thing. And now I'm at a point where I'm debating what my next car will be. I'm having the practical versus fun argument within myself.
Welcome to the world of car, Joy.
Yeah, fun is winning. So I think I might be going back to a manual at some point soon. So we'll see how that all works out. I mean, I'm working from home now, which is the one nice thing. So to me, it's, I kind of said, I have a long commute every day, manual, it's a bit of a pain.
Right.
But now I don't really need to worry about that. So I'm thinking, you know what? I'm just going to go and do it.
Well, you should. And it's interesting, again, this pandemic the world's had to deal with and how it's changed perspectives on so many things. I had a guest on the show a few weeks ago that is like the world record setter on Corvette sales. This guy sold more Corvettes, I think, than anybody, Mike Furman. And of course, the new Corvette, can't even get it in a manual. You can't even buy a Ferrari in a manual. So many cars, they're just not available anymore. And it's mainly because people don't want them anymore. I guess part of me understands that, having been a commuter and having to deal with commuting, and you kind of go, it's no fun. But, doesn't mean we can't have fun. And there's lots of paddle shifts out there, so you kind of play race car driver. I mean, if it's good enough for F1, it's good enough for the street, right? So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Although manual is, I always say, it's the ultimate anti-theft device.
Well, these days it is. My kids both learned how to drive on manuals. Their first cars were manuals. I did that for a reason. And I think to this day, of all their friends and even spouses, they're the only ones that can drive a manual. So yeah, that's the way to keep your car parked somewhere. Well, I want to crawl into wait, before I ask this next question, let's go back to what fun car are you thinking about? If you could pick one or two fun cars, your definition of a replacement for your current car, what are you looking at?
Well, I go from one extreme to the other. I always loved the VW GTI.
Oh, yeah.
I had one of those when I was quite young, and they were fun. That was a fun hot hatch.
Yep.
At the other extreme, this is more of a financial debate than whether it is whether I want to do it or not. For me, the 911, the Porsche 911 is just the car.
Yeah. Well, my listeners know how I'm going to drive you there. Let's go for the 911. That's been my car of choice for decades. I've driven them to work every day for decades. They're great cars. Of course, like any car, now if you're going to buy a new one, that's different. But if you're looking at used cars, then you definitely want it to get it vetted. And there's certain years to look out for things. But you know what? You can find experts. Call me anytime. I'll be a great guide for you. Just don't tell your significant other, because they probably won't like the way I'm going to steer you. But the Porsche 911, well, that's kind of a nice segue to the next question. And that is, if you were a vehicle, Mark, what kind of vehicle would you be and why?
Well, and it's funny you say that, because the 911, essentially it's small, it's fast, and it's adaptable. It always amazes me when I have a couple of books on the 911, and these things were used in rallying, they're used in hill climbs, they're used in circuit racing. I wouldn't even be surprised if there's a couple that were used as a dragster.
Well, off-road. Think of the Paris Dakar 959.
Well, that's it. Exactly. I mean, that's kind of how I would hope that I am. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe not the small part, but it always amazed me how adaptable that car is. And I think over my life, and certainly over my career, that is pretty much that's always been kind of one of my strengths is to be adaptable, to deal with whatever comes my way. And it's the old cliche, make lemonade or lemons. That's kind of how I like to look at things.
There you go. Nice choice. I love it. Well, we're entering what I call the last lap. You've been around tracks. You know what that means. White flag's out. I'm going to rattle off some quick questions, get some quick answers from you, some blips of that Porsche 911 throttle. So here we go. What's one of your personal habits you believe has helped you with your successes in life?
Perseverance.
Yeah.
Perseverance is really the key. And I think that's something that I always stress with, certainly with my son, is you just have to persevere. You just can't say no or kind of that's the way it should be. You really, really have to push. If it's something that's that important to you, you need to push. So yeah, perseverance for sure.
Well, it goes back to Winston Churchill. Never, ever, never, ever, never give up. So there you go. I think he might have said it with a few more nevers or evers, but you get my drift.
Yeah.
Now, if I could arrange for you to have a drink or a meal with anyone in the automotive world, living or deceased, and as I say that, I know who it's going to be, who would you like to spend an evening with?
Well, ironically enough,
not going to be Jill?
It would not be Jill.
Okay.
The guy that I would really love to spend an evening and have a beer with would be Mario Andretti.
Oh, okay.
That guy has been, first of all, he seems just like a really nice guy. I don't think anybody has ever said anything bad about Mario Andretti. And he's just been, the guy has driven everything.
Yep.
And it would just be fascinating to hear some of his stories from any era of his career. But that would be the guy. I think that would be a heck of a nice evening would be to spend it with him.
Indeed. Now, when it comes to automotive advice, what's the best advice someone else has ever offered you?
It is not what you can afford to buy, but it's what you can afford to maintain.
That's one thing that people forget. They save and save and save and buy some expensive sports car, and then they call their insurance company and they go, what? Especially if they have a teenager in the house. Oh my goodness, that's not going to work for me. So yes, and I always say, ask people who own the vehicle you love and ask them, how reliable, if you're just going to be a daily driver, and what does it cost to get these things fixed and maintained? So there you go. Now, when it comes to resources, let's start with this business that you're providing, because this is just an invaluable resource, Motorsports Prospect. So I'm going to lead the way on that question, but is there another resource, another go-to you find yourself enjoying quite often?
Well, I do enjoy either Autosport or Racer Magazine. Those are kind of the two that I really go to as far as the general motorsport information. I mean, Autosport, I was a subscriber for years. I'm a digital subscriber now. Mm-hmm. I knew I was hooked when I started, back in the day. I used to get Autosport. There would be a 3-week delay because it was from England.
Oh, yeah.
You had to order it. Like, I'd go to the newsstand and you actually had to prepay. So the guy would know that, he wasn't going to order in this, whatever it cost, $10 magazine, right, that you were actually going to buy it. I knew when I started going into that phase of life that I was pretty much done. So those are the two. And I love Racer Magazine. It's North American. It's a good quality, old-fashioned publication. And those are few and far between. Those are the two main ones.
Great. Awesome. Now, when it comes to books, is there a book you've read this year that you think everybody should be reading?
Yes. I just read, and so many people recommended it, but I hadn't gotten around to it, Flat Out by Perry McCarthy.
Yeah.
First of all, it's hysterical. And he's just a great writer. He's a real character. And, if you follow racing and certainly Formula One, I mean, this guy has raced with some of the, I'm not going to say biggest losers, but
well,
I mean.
It was tough. Yeah. Perry's had some challenges. Perry, for those of you that are regular listeners, of course, he's the original Black Stig on Top Gear. He was a guest of mine a couple months ago.
Oh.
Yeah, wonderful. So now you and he are Cars Yeah alumni. Wonderful guy to talk with. Flat Out is an awesome book about his life, which is really the way he's lived his life flat out. But you look at Perry, some of the things, one of his first races, the car died in the pit lane and he's pushing it. In fact, he spurred me to write a blog about stoicism and persistence and tenacity. I do a weekly blog here on Cars Yeah that you listeners, if you're not a subscriber, please do. In fact, we even gave away a copy of his book. So Flat Out, great book, Great guy for sure. You can find all these resources on Mark's very own show notes page. Just go to carsyeah.com, type in Mark, and I'll spell his last name, Boudreau. But you can type Mark in there. There's a couple Marks here at Cars Yeah. I'm one. This is one. There's a couple others, so not a bad name. All right, Mark, we're up to the checkered flag, and this last question can be a bit of a doozy. I'm buying you a fun car today, a collector car. Anything in the world that you want. Don't worry about the cost. Don't worry about any of that because you're going to be stuck with it. It's a keeper. It's a driver, but it's the only one cool car you can have. So what am I buying you today, Mark?
An Aston Martin DB5.
We're going down the road of James Bond. The late, great Sean Connery, who we lost this year, sadly. Let's see. There's so many cars to choose from. I think there's some obvious things here when you think about Aston Martin, DB5, James Bond, 007. I mean, it all kind of makes sense, but they're beautiful cars. What is it about the Aston that intrigues you so much?
It's just got a classic styling. And it's that sound. I mean, I've always been attracted, as much as I love the 911, I've always been attracted to those kind of classic British sports cars from the 50s and 60s. As a matter of fact, speaking of Top Gear, I was watching, and I'm trying to remember if it was a Top Gear episode, but Aston Martin actually have recreated the classic DB5 with the machine guns and everything.
That's where I was going to go with this. I was going to say, is it okay if I buy one of the new ones they're doing versus an old one? A couple manufacturers are starting to do this kind of thing, which I think is pretty cool. Now, so others would say, well, it's not real. I'm like, well, they're building it, and it's probably better than the other one. And if you're going to drive it, that's what I would go for. I even saw a Jaguar XKE Series 1 at the Quail last year that was all electric. And as I was standing there looking at it, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I mean, all the challenges with British cars. This would be cool. Of course, others next to me are saying, blasphemy, how could they do that? But I thought it was a pretty cool idea. So can I buy you one of the new ones? Is that okay?
Absolutely. I'm not religious about the vintage and all that. I will take it is Aston Martin at the end of the day building it, so works for me.
Well, and it's probably better. The metal is probably better. It probably runs better, stops better. Everything. So, nothing like having machine guns to clear traffic on a busy day, a busy commute. That'll open the pathway. Mark, you've taken me on a fun ride today, buddy. I thought this would be great, and it was. I want to thank you for sharing your journey with the Cars Yeah listeners. Before I let you ride off into the Quebec countryside in that beautiful Aston Martin, what is one little parting piece of wisdom or guidance you might offer our listeners?
Well, it's a cliche, but really never give up. If 2020 hasn't taught us anything, it's that. I mean, look how people have still managed to persevere and do the things that they want to do despite what is, all the obstacles that are ahead of them. So never give up, project ahead. Things will not be the way they are forever. And that is the key thing, I think, and that applies to really everything, regardless of whether it's related to cars or racing or whatever. Essentially, just don't give up. Just keep pushing ahead.
It's the racer's creed, and it works.
Yeah.
What's the best way for people to learn more about motorsports prospects?
Okay, so they can go to motorsportprospects.com. If you search also Motorsport Prospects, you'll get the site. We are on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. The site is cool because there's two sections of it. There's the directory, which I had mentioned already. There's also a regularly updated blog, which, for example, next week there'll be an article on motorsport insurance. So we cover a lot of, we have a lot of good interviews and a lot of stuff that anybody interested or involved in motorsport might find to be quite beneficial to them. Yeah, we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all those kind of resources. But even if you search for on Google Motorsport Resources, I think we come up second or third. So
cool.
By all means, that would be the way to get in touch with us.
I'll make sure I put links on all these, I should say, on Mark's show notes page in the Cars Yeah website. Check it out. If you or somebody who's interested in getting involved with motorsports, this is a wonderful resource. Absolutely tremendous. You're going to find that he'll help you navigate the tumultuous track towards being a driver or anybody in the motorsports business. Check it out at Motorsports Prospects. Mark, thanks for being so generous today with your time and your expertise. I want to thank you for spending some time with me today. This has been great. Until you and I talk again, I'll see you down the road.
Really appreciate it. Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome. If you're listening to Cars Yeah, you probably spent some time working on your favorite ride. But how confident are you working on your finances? You may be able to rebuild a fuel injection system, but can you decipher the details of a mutual fund? If you're like me, investments, insurance, annuities, budgeting, and other financial concepts may seem a bit daunting, but what if I told you there's a book that describes these subjects and more in an easy-to-read and a very humorous way? My friend Chris Kimball, CFP, a longtime sponsor and past guest here on Cars Yeah, has written that book, and it's titled The Saga of Ike and Penny, a couple's humorous journey through the confusing world of finance. It's a fun look at things you need to know, everything from investing to effective ways to get rid of credit card debt, and it's probably the only book on finance with a VMAX on the front cover and a classic Mini Cooper on the back. The book's available at Amazon for just $10, and this book will dramatically improve the direction of your financial future. I gave copies to each of my children. All securities are through Money Concepts Capital Corp. Christopher Kimball Financial Services is not affiliated with Money Concepts Capital Corp. Get your copy, The Saga of Ike and Penny, today.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.